Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 2. In today's episode we are going to set our sights on the Mun. The game really wants to push us forward in its progression and told us that the next thing we should do is plant a flag on the Mun, so that's what we're going to do. And if we have any time we're going to complete the following mission, which is to discover the monument. So I'm going to skip past the actual building of the craft. If that is something that you're interested in, let me know in the comments below. But for this episode, I just figured I would focus our time and energy on the mission at hand. But anyways, here we are. We're looking at the missions that we have available. We've already tracked the mission to plant a flag on the Mun. But the next stop, the primary one, that is what we're going to be focusing on today. And the perfect circle is just to establish a nice orbit, and so we're going to be able to do that as well. But here we are, craft on the launch pad. It looks a little funky, but that's because we are going to do a direct descent. Just listen to those engines. Absolutely wonderful. But yeah, so this rocket's a little funky. I didn't have access to a smaller docking port, so my idea to dock a craft using the Mach 1 command pod kind of fell short from that. So what we ended up using was the hitchhiker can, and which was big enough for the docking port, and then the plane capsule, the one that's made for the Mach 1 plane. We're going to use that as our return capsule. The idea is that with the RCS on board, it should be able to maneuver itself well enough, and it's got plenty of fuel left for a return trip. We have 4 boosters and 5 engines on the actual landing stage itself, with fuel lines going between them. So this should have enough delta V to not only go from low Kerbal orbit to the Mun, but to land on the Mun and then discard its side stages as it goes to rendezvous with the return craft. And we're going to just take a nice peaceful trip upwards. Look at the ground below us, the clouds, stars above. Nice ambient soundtrack going as we burn through our side boosters. And this is just the game soundtrack. Normally in my KSP1 and my RP1, I add in the music that we have from my various sites. But with KSP2, we're going to focus on the soundtrack that they provide because it is phenomenal. So there we are. Our side boosters flamed out, so we are going to separate them. They fly off beautifully. No separatrons necessary. Then we're just going to focus on burning the rest of our circularization burn, get ourselves to orbit. It's very peaceful floating up here. Sky above us, sun behind us, the light reflecting off the planet, bouncing off to our craft. So enjoyable. And we're going to head back into mission control to just take another look at this contract to see what the parameters for its orbit are. And then we're going to go ahead and complete that because that should be fairly simple. So rather than creating a maneuver point, we're just going to time warp to the apoapsis and bring it down just ever so slightly. Excuse me, the periapsis. Bring down the apoapsis ever so slightly. This has a reaction wheel on the main lander itself, which is why it's a little slow to turn around because it's only got the medium one. What I was wiggling there is the fact that we have so much delta V left in our craft that we're going to be able to use this lifting stage as our lunar transfer vehicle. And that's quite good because that just gives us more delta V for the actual landing itself. So just real fast, I spoke right through it. It didn't take long at all for us to circularize in the appropriate altitude to satisfy that contract. So now the next one that they want is an eccentric orbit, which, because we're going to be going to the Mun, we're going to be extending out our orbit into an eccentric orbit anyway, so we're going to go ahead and track that mission and keep going. So let's go ahead and plan our maneuver. And there we go. We have just an encounter, just a minor. It's 200 kilometers above. That's not too bad. So we're just going to go ahead and take that maneuver, and we will adjust it into the approach that we want once we've completed this, and then we'll do a mid-course correction. And just like that, K2D2 takes over and time warps our way to the maneuver and gets ready to execute it. A glorious sunrise, and we can see the moon directly ahead of us. We are getting ready for our burn. For those who don't know, if you'd like to eyeball your way to the Mun, all you need to do is point prograde, and then when you see the Mun start to rise over the horizon of Kerbin, then burn prograde towards it, and that'll get you a general encounter. It's not perfect, but that little noise that we heard is us completing our contract for the eccentric orbit. Very easy, like I mentioned. We're going to be able to do it unintentionally. Look at those mountains. Quite nice. So one thing I want to point out, just while we have some time, while we're making our burn towards the Mun, is that I have not played this far in my attempts. When I first started my first run, I had not gotten to the Mun yet. So this is as far as I've gotten. So as far as like where the Mun monument is, or if we can even access it with the craft that we've built, I am not sure, and we will be figuring that out as we go along. So I just wanted to take a quick second to mention that. But here we are. We have successfully made a lunar intercept. And so we're just going to plot our mid-course correction to bring us down to the altitude that we wanted. Because 200 is a little high. It is more efficient to come in at a higher altitude and circularize then, and then lower yourself from there. But when we have a craft like this, I like to just brute force it. Especially since we're hauling this huge boat of an engine. Might as well put it to good use. So the time warp kicks in, sends us hurtling away from the planet. Sometimes I wish it wouldn't start so fast. It would just slowly ramp up and pull away from wherever you're at. That'd be fine. But we are getting ready to execute our maneuver. We're just going to wait for the K2D2 to take over. And just like that, it is done because mid-course corrections, especially something as simple as an altitude adjustment, are very small and very precise maneuvers. So having something like the mod really helps because the computers will always be more accurate than a human being. Well, I say always, but I will retract that and say usually. So here we are, now in the sphere of influence of the MUN. So we're going to go ahead and plot our maneuver at the periapsis, and we're going to point ourselves retrograde enough to capture. And as you see, it takes hardly any delta V at all, that we are going to be able to utilize all of the fuel in this lower stage and just slightly some in the next. So let's go ahead and bring ourselves into a stable orbit around the MUN. And once we get ourselves lined into the right position, lined up with the retrograde node, K2D2 takes over once again and will time warp us towards the planet. We're going to speed forward as it comes into view. Beautiful quality textures. Wonderful soundtrack. I'm probably not going to comment too much as we come in for a landing. At least during this part, I can kind of talk freely, but once we're on our way down, I think we'll let the video speak for itself. We have a nice little curb and rise as we come in for a capture. And with that, we have successfully completed our orbit. We have 118 delta V left in there, so we definitely over-engineered this craft. So I'm not really sure where I want to land, but the contract says that we should plant a flag in one of the mares, which means one of the flat parts of the MUN, those dark areas. I go ahead and take Valentina, put her out on EVA to do any kind of EVA science now that we are at orbiting low above the MUN. So we're going to go ahead and do crew observation report. She gives a little spin as she talks into her helmet microphone, and then pretty safely and securely goes back into the craft. So I'm going to time warp my way. I was not orbiting the direction that I thought I was. Turns out I'm going towards the left. But we're going to go ahead and time warp until we make one more pass around the MUN, and then we're going to look for a nice landing spot. And that big little crater, flatland, sea, whatever you want to call it, looks like just the right spot. And I nearly hit the destroy button. I think it's a little silly that the focus button has the destroy button directly next to it. Oh, Kerbal. Alright, so let's go ahead and create our maneuver plan. And I learned the hard way that you can't create a maneuver plan while the game is paused. So we have to have it playing, which is fine. We've got plenty of room, plenty of time to work on it. So I don't know why I decide that I don't want to land straight, that I want to kind of come down at this angle here and go into this lower section. Makes no sense. I don't know what was in my brain, why I was thinking about that. Maybe I was trying to use more delta V, but I don't know why I would want to use more delta V. But regardless, I get rid of that maneuver node and then opt for a more reasonable, straightforward one. So we're going to go ahead and place it here, relatively close to the one that I did before. And we're just going to aim for purely retrograde burn, so that way we come down nice and easy. The goal, initially when I was planning this way back in the VAB, back when we had never left Kerbin, my goal was to take that top part of the craft and leave that in orbit, so that way we can rendezvous with it as we return from the lunar surface. And then we would take that home, and that would make for a nice little situation. But I kind of put that out of my head as I was making this landing plan. And I just went ahead and plotted the maneuver, let K2D2 take over. And then before I could really realize what I had done, I went ahead and put our whole craft on a suborbital trajectory, which means that this rescue craft is going to be coming down with us. But that's okay. It will actually pay off in the end. We'll have been very happy that we brought that with us. But until then, I'm kicking myself right now. And that's all it took for our fuel to run out. And it takes me a second to remember that this was a 2-part burn, and that I needed to stage that away to complete it. There we go. We've got all 5 of our Terrier engines going. We do have fuel lines hooked up between them, so once the 4 on the outside have been depleted and ejected, the center one will fill up once more with fuel, and we will have a full tank and less weight. So hopefully that would have been enough to get us from the surface back up into orbit to rendezvous with this ship. But as it stands now, we're going to have extra weight on us that we had not planned for. So landing is not going to be a given. It is still going to require some work and some effort and some clever piloting on Valentina's part. I'm looking around the mod menu to see if there's any kind of information as far as the suicide burn, but no time to impact can be found anywhere. Maybe I missed it. Maybe if you know of it or if you can see it here, please let me know in the comments below. But as far as I know, there is no time to impact counter available. So we are going to have to fly by intuition and make sure that we just keep an eye on our gauges, that our rate of descent isn't so drastic that we can't cancel that by the time we impact the surface. And I give up there. So we are just going to take over manually. There's something glittering on the surface over in the corner there. I can see it as I'm flying by. Something big enough that we can see it from orbit. That's interesting. Alright, so we come back to regular time warp speed. We hit on our engines real fast and see that we actually have quite a decent thrust to weight ratio here. We can stop pretty quickly with these engines. So we're going to go ahead and keep them off for now. Let ourselves drift down to the surface a little bit more and utilize them when they're a bit more efficient. And they're a little too efficient. We're actually slowing down much faster than I had expected. We're about 5,000 meters above the surface, but we had already gotten lower than 100 meters per second, so we killed our engines to save ourselves from having to float down at too slow of a speed. Love to have a suicide burn countdown in here. Up there we can see the debris from our lower stage. And thankfully it's suborbital, so it will crash on impact and get rid of our debris. $2,500 meters up, 50 meters per second. And the music calms down now that we've got a nice safe descent. If we were heading down a lot faster, it would be a lot more tense. And just like that, 7 meters per second at 1,200 meters up, we are going to be okay as long as we pay enough attention and don't forget to kick on our thrusters before impact. And the gorgeous landscape comes into view as we get ever so close to the surface. Now is the important part. We gotta make sure we don't descend too quickly that we break our legs or even worse, our engines. But there we go. We have successfully touched down on the Mun surface. We have taken a Kerbal and flung her from our planet to our moon. I say our like it's ours, but you know what? It's ours. It's ours. It's our space agency. It's our planet. It's our world. And Val is our gal. So take a quick look at my stages. Make sure that I know where everything is and everything is exactly how I want it. Especially since we now have our rescue craft or our return crafts. We brought it with us. So let's go ahead and go back to mission control and turn in the two completed missions. So that was the eccentric orbit, and then here is the landing on the Mun. Awesome. Someone just threw a paper airplane across the screen. That was kind of fun. Okay, so we have a couple more missions. One to escape Kerbin's sphere of influence, and the other one to launch a satellite and have it roam mid-mess. But we also have, for a primary contract, the lunar signal, which is to say they want us to find the monument that exists on the Mun. So I go ahead and track that. I track the other ones as well, and we're just going to go back to our... Val, what are you doing? Just having a good old time? Oh, that's good. Make sure you get some work done while you do that, too. So we're going to go back to Val, and then we are going to work on getting her home, because we want to get her ready for another quest, another mission, another flight, if you will. Come back to the Mun, discover that lunar signal that they were talking about. So she goes ahead and creates an observation report, tells everybody back home what she sees, how she feels. And then she's going to plant a flag in the name of Val. She's going to name it the First Landing. First Landing. There we go. And she's going to say, Val's our gal. Quotes. Mission control. There we go. Mission control definitely said that. I definitely heard Gene Kerman say that Val's our gal. There we go. That's definitely not the flag that I picked in the beginning, but, you know, it works. KSP. Planted in the name of. Alright, so let's get Val back on the ship, and let's get her home. Oh, she decides to do a crew observation report after jumping in the air or jumping in altitude, because there's really no air here. I mean, there is, but, you know, now we're getting technical. But anyways, she tries to run an observation report well up above the surface, but it takes her quite a bit to do this little backflip. So eventually she's gonna have to give up on that. But that's okay. There's plenty of time. There's definitely gonna be more moon missions. So Val, quit messing around, come on home. So with her back in the ship and we kind of moving our camera around, we realize that we have the marker for the lunar signal right there, and it's not on the other side of the mun. No, that is close. So Val decides to take some executive decision here, and she's going to head straight for that in an attempt to land, precision land at whatever that thing is. And once again, I just want to point out that I did not plan this. I had no idea where that moon arch was. I did get to see it on my way down, but I thought that was just, you know, one of those rocks that you can study or something. But that's from the Breaking Ground DLC, so of course it's not going to be a rock that you can discover. That's not part of this. So excitedly we do some science as we get closer, and we can actually see it with our naked eye. Our trajectory is not great, so we're going to go ahead and burn retrograde a little bit to bring in our proposed landing point. We put it just past the arch because that will give us room to suicide burn as we come back down. And once again, the drums are kicking in, so I think I'm gonna let them narrate the landing for us. I'll see you soon. And just like that, we reach 20 meters per second. So it looks like we're going to be doing pretty good with this landing. It's Nice to see that we could complete a mission so easily, so gracefully, so peacefully, that we don't even need to pay attention to how much fuel we have left. No, who needs to do that? Who needs thrust to weight ratio? Who needs Valentina Kerman? Oh, well, what's this? Why, ladies and gentlemen, our intrepid hero has indeed survived. So let's get her upright and try to see if we can't keep our gal safe and sound. And just like that, she is back on the surface. While the craft leaves a lot to be desired, it still has an engine and RCS thrust, battery, and communication, so it should be doing as fine as it can. So let's go ahead and get her out and check out this mysterious signal that was so important that she risked her whole way home for. First, of course, she's got to do some science. Bill would have her hide if she didn't take a sample. And, of course, Mission Control wants to know what everything's like out there, so she gives them a nice report. Thankful to have landed with just enough daylight to see by, as opposed to on the dark side of the moon, which ever so often happens. And look at that. The Monarch, the uncovered, fully discovered Monarch that shows the Kerbal system, all the planets and their moons. A precursor, ancient technology, civilization that came before them, beckoning them forward into the cosmos, hinting at things to come. And overall, just starting the storyline of Kerbal Space Program 2. There's a lot to be discovered out there. On every single celestial body, there's some sort of clue to the Kerbal's missing path. I'm excited to start uncovering it. So, in true Kerbal fashion, we have stranded someone on the Mun, but also in true Kerbal fashion, that means that we can mount a rescue mission. So stay tuned for the next episode as we find another daring Kerbal to huck at this little piece of rock and hopefully get them both back. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more KSP2. If you did, please consider giving me a like, drop me a comment, let me know your thoughts, and I will see y'all in the next one. Take care.